right, welcome back once again, everybody. I'm Don Seifrit. It's the Dr. Treefruit and Don podcast. I'm here with Dr. Kari Peter. Say hi, Kari.
Hi, and welcome back, Don.
Thanks. I was going to thank you for holding my seat warm for me.
Oh, you're
Uh,
very
here,
welcome.
here with Dr. Shan Kumar. Say hi, Sean.
Hello, everyone.
And Dr. Greg Krawczyk. Say hi, Greg.
Hello, good to have the whole group together again.
I know it's nice to be back. So we'll start with Dr. Kumar talking about thinning because, as I think everyone listening to this probably knows, thinning is currently our most pressing concern.
Thanks, Don. I thought I'll first give an update about where things are at different parts of the state. And I guess I'd like to thank Melanie Shoup and Don yourself for giving us these updates from these different regions, from the South Central region in Freck, Adams County, and Don at Berks County in different orchards. So thank you for giving me those updates to compile to kind of give the update for the whole state with regards to thinning. So we'll start with southern Pennsylvania. That's the most advanced. We are at Freck in Biglerville. We are anywhere from around 16 to 19 millimeters for the different varieties. So having said that, we are at the end range of the effectiveness of using thinners like 6-BA and NAA, which are two of the most popular thinners that are being used for thinning a lot of the varieties, Gala, Fuji, and whatnot. And so they tend to work. The last that they tend to work in terms of fruitlet size is that 16 to 18 millimeters. So for South Central Pennsylvania, if you'd have seen my update that I sent yesterday with the fruit times, yesterday was probably the kind of last day for thinning in Adams County and surrounding regions who were at that stage between 16 to 18 millimeters for thinning with those chemicals, 6-BA, NAA, where they tend to lower their efficacy is much lower when sprayed after that. So we are done with that phase of thinning. However, for growers in Adams County who are worried about getting thinning, because as far as we have had cool weathers this week, right? We had going into the weekend, we were at 60s, and then we were 70, good temperatures yesterday. And then again, we are going into cool weather, and I guess we have one more warm weather day, maybe Thursday, that also has a condition suitable for spraying. But so the problem with Adams County and that region is because of the weather that we've been having, we've been in a carbohydrate surplus, so to speak, uh, with regards to the tree status because of the weather, which means that thinners will have a lesser efficacy in terms of removing fruitlets, just because there's not that carbohydrate deficit in order to cause that stress for the tree to drop off those fruitlets. So that is something to keep in mind when you're thinking about thinning, especially thinning blocks that are very hard to thin, especially with using products such as 6-BA, NAA, what you sprayed yesterday. You want to keep an eye on that and maybe follow up with other thinning sprays sometime next week in order to get good thinning. So I just talked about how 6-BA and NAA are probably not as effective from here on. So what are the other things that you can use in terms of thinning next week sometime is ethyl. And you can spray ethyl and carbaryl. And if you really want to go in with a powerful thinning, you want to spray ethyl plus carbaryl plus spray oil. Usually a combination of these three can also target fruits up to around 23, 24 millimeters. I think they'll be able to target those fruitlets for once in blocks where you're worried about thinning. So that's the update for the South Central region, Adams County and neighboring counties. With moving on to the southeast part of the state, Don, you sent me an email yesterday. The average sizes there are approximately anywhere from 11 to 13 millimeters, which is the perfect size for thinning. And I know that a lot of growers in your region thinned yesterday. Yesterday was pretty much the only day this week, or they might have an opportunity Thursday, but that you could possibly thin. Also, the similar thing with the weather, we have seen it's not as bad as South Central region with regards to carbohydrate surplus or deficits, because we've had slight carbohydrate deficits in that region. Of course, there's a caveat here because I'm using the weather data from Warwick Park, which can be quite distant from some orchards in your region. But on average, we've had in that region, we are seeing slightly less surpluses. So that might again mean that you might not get the full extent of the thinning that you want in that region. It will still do a good job, especially because the size it is at the right size. But you might want to follow up and maybe do a carbaryl spray next week, especially in your hard to thin varieties. For your easy to thin varieties, I think you can sneak by with your spray yesterday. But for hard to thin varieties, you might want to follow up with carbaryl and ethyl or some combination of that next week, depending on the weather, of course. And so that's for that region. In the central region, we are actually in Rock Springs Orchard, we are anywhere from 6 to 8 millimeters in fruitlet size for the different varieties. So yesterday was also a good thinning day for this region as well, to get in early when you have the chance to be able to thin. And the carbohydrate deficits for thinning seem to have increased from southern Pennsylvania to southeast to where I'm located at Rock Springs, which means that we will get better thinning efficacy from these sprays as compared to the regions, the southern regions. So yesterday was a good thinning day. Thursday might be another good thinning day if the weather holds up, of course, for this region, central region in Pennsylvania, which I'm talking about State College and maybe neighboring counties, depending on, of course, your fruitlet size in your own orchard. So you might want to get started with spraying. And another note, again, 6BA products, they really only work like Maxell and Excelis. They only work when you have temperatures above 72, 73 degrees Celsius, degree Fahrenheit, almost to about the low 80s. So you want to keep that in mind with the temperatures that we have been having and the averages of the temperatures, the day before and the days after. We're not really, we might not see that much efficacy with 6PA products, but NAA-based products will work for will have some efficacy even in less than optimal temperatures in the 60s. And so will carbaryl and compounds like that. Now, moving on to Western Pennsylvania, we see a similar sort of growing pattern as Central Pennsylvania, maybe slightly after as well. So the same thing applies to Western Pennsylvania, what we talked about in Central region. And of course, Erie currently is at petal fall for most cultivars. And we're seeing that they're for anywhere from, 2 to 3 to 4 millimeters. So we'll just wait ahead. And I guess another thing that I wanted to mention for the Central, Western, and Erie regions is we have had frosts. So before you think about thinning, you do want to look at each of your blocks to see how they've been affected by frost, because different sections of the orchard can react differently. For example, in my orchard in Rock Springs, one part of the orchard is it's at least a few degrees colder, and so the frost pretty much killed out most of the blossoms for me in our Fuji and Honeycrisp block. Whereas in the other blocks, in other parts of the orchard, they're doing fine. We maybe lost the kings, but otherwise we're doing fine. So it's important to make sure you check all of that before you decide on thinning decisions. We are at the tail end of frost season, but as we have had temperatures going all very warm, very cold, things like that. So there's always a risk of frost. Last year we got a frost at May 18th. So that is something to keep in mind. I know growers here are reluctant to go in and spray early because of that chances of frost in the central and upper regions. So I guess that is, of course, something to keep in mind as well. If you want to delay it to next week, then you could possibly considering the risk for frost sometime next week or things like that. The other thing I wanted to mention is what I've noticed is because of the temperatures that have been going up and down and up and down, we've been seeing this for almost 3 weeks. It's really affected the fruitlet development, especially in some field work that I did last week. I noticed that there's a huge variation in where the fruitlets are. Like most of the spur fruitlets are much far advanced than some other fruitlets in other spurs, as well as all the spurs on 1-year-old wood and spurs that all the fruitlets on 1-year-old wood and the fruitlets, especially towards the top of the tree. We're noticing a lot of variation. So for hard to thin blocks, this applies for any region. For hard to thin blocks, if you're seeing that kind of variation, and this week might be an optimal week to control for that. You might not affect your other kings and the well-developed fruitlets, the well-sized fruitlets, but you can still go in and do a thinning spray to remove all of those fruitlets on 1-year-old wood, and also other fruitlets that are much smaller in size. That might be the ideal time to remove them. So that's something to keep in mind as well, especially if you're worried about sizing in your fruits, and especially varieties like Gala that we had sizing issues last year. But so that is basically my update for this week, and good luck with all the rain. Thanks, Don.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. So one quick question before we turn it over. You talked about easy to thin and hard to thin varieties. Is there a way that folks can find out if they have easy to thin or hard to thin varieties, especially if they're new? Is there a
Yes,
yeah,
there's a very good way for growers to find out, and that is to get the Pennsylvania Tree Fruit Guide. That's pretty new. That Kari worked a lot on with and edited that. That's a Tree Fruit Production Guide 2024-2025. You can get that as an online version, and it's very clear on. It lists all the varieties that is easy to thin. You know, when you have moderately difficult to thin. So easy to thin varieties examples are Brayburn, Ginger Gold, Granny Smith, Ida Red, Pink Lady, and others. Moderately difficult are like Cameo, Empire, Gala, Rome, and others. And then we have these hard to thin varieties that Fuji leading the pack, but also Golden Delicious, Spur Delicious, Spur Rome, York Imperial, and all of those varieties. So there's a lot more of that in the Tree Fruit Guide. But there are also, of course, other online resources that you can check with check online as well in different extension websites of both Penn State. We have a video on that, but also in Cornell and other universities, you can check out their experiences with hard to thin, medium to thin, and easy to thin varieties. Greg just mentioned in the chat that there is not an online version of the Tree Fruit Production Guide. I apologize for that. So I guess if you want to buy a copy of the Tree Fruit Production Guide, then contact your extension educator. I'm sure that they will be able to get a guide to you.
Yep, we've got plenty of copies in the county offices. You can buy them through our website.
There are
Okay.
there are hard copies, and you can also buy a digital version. So Sean, you may have been thinking about the digital version. So that one is delivered basically to you immediately. And so that is if like you utilize iPads or want to look at it on your computer.
That's a file that you have to download and basically have it on your phone or computer or iPad.
Okay, thanks.
It's an interactive online version. We don't have this for one reason or another.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Cool. Let's go on to Kari then.
Okay, so I feel like I'm a broken record when it comes to talking about what we need to worry about, what are the conditions, because I feel like we're sort of in this never-ending loop of constant rain. So right now, it seems across the state, everyone should be out of bloom. So the risk for fire blight is really only going to impact those who have straggler blooms, which could be quite a few people, because I know there's a lot of tougher varieties out there that definitely have that rat tail or what I call a straggler type of bloom. So what should you do? How do you manage that? Because you don't want to be spraying antibiotics all the time to when you have open blooms. So what could be alternatives? Well, first, using the prohexadione calcium apogee or kudos, this will actually help. Like when you put on an application, that will help your blossoms, but you have to have it on early enough in order for it to kick in, because that product takes 10 to 14 days to kick in. And research out of Cornell, and then my own research here to see if I could duplicate Cornell's results, is that product, it's a plant growth regulator, so it hardens off the shoots. Well, it by thickening the cell walls of the plant tissue, and the cell walls will also be thickened in the nectaries. And what we've found, or what we've observed, is that when you apply it when you've got bloom, it thickens the cell walls enough that limits the spread of the bacteria from the stigmas into the nectaries. So by applying apogee or kudos, you will get some kind of protection. In addition to your shoots being hardened off and limiting shoot blight, you will also be helping that straggler bloom or that rat tail bloom that's occurring with some varieties. So I still really advocate for the use of apogee or kudos, especially on dwarf rootstocks. I know some people don't want to be applying that because it's going to limit growth, but you can recoup growth. It's going to be a lot more difficult to recoup a dead tree. So, especially this year, this is a tough year, and I don't know, I haven't seen anything yet. But then again, I haven't had a chance to really go and scout areas to see if there has been outbreaks of fire blight. I've noticed in my own locations, and even in some of my potted trees that I have for experiments, that I have noticed some fire blight pop up. That definitely, like, the conditions were there for the fire blight to move within an already infected tree. So, we definitely had the conditions for fire blight this year. So, in my disease update last week, I advocated people to go out and start scouting for fire blight infections. The sooner you cut it out, the better off you're going to be. You might still be chasing it because of how wet it's been, and that the rain and such is going to be spreading any oozing bacteria, unfortunately. But you want to be looking at those fruit clusters or those old blossom clusters, because that's where that initial infection would have occurred. You want to be looking at the spur leaves, the blackened, wilting, as far as dead blossoms. I mean, you may see dead blossoms in general, but like the dead blossoms due to fire blight look a lot different than sort of blossoms that have just dried up, that weren't pollinated. So I would really encourage people to go out and scout very aggressively in locations that have had known history of fire blight. So especially in the youngest trees, especially in younger blocks, and also in newly planted areas that might have been blooming during the last several weeks. Because I know when people get their trees from the nursery, they're planting them anywhere from March until now, as far as in their orchards, the new trees. So, and in that time, a lot of those trees will start, will be blooming, unfortunately. So if you haven't done anything to those blossoms, just keep an eye out for them. If you do see fire blight, please don't cut things out when it's wet, because the wetness, that water, is a vehicle for the bacteria to move. So you want to be careful about the timing of when you cut out affected areas. So you want to make sure you do it during a dry time, or definitely a time that's not raining, or let's say really humid. It was extraordinarily foggy yesterday here in Biglerville. That's not a time to cut out fire blight, I can tell you. That moisture in the air, that high humidity, that's great conditions for the Erwinia bacteria. So just be mindful of the conditions, that if you do see it, the measures that you take just are going to are going to be influenced basically by what's going on in the environment. So the drier the better, if that's possible right now. It might be real challenging with the amount of rain we've been having. As far as any other products, I know folks just aren't keen. Some folks aren't keen on using Apogee or Kudos. You can use copper sprays like Quava. Quava is gentler on fruit finish, but you are going to have to spray it pretty regularly, probably once a week until the shoots harden off to slow down shoot blight. And the Quava is not cheap. So, that's another thing to take into consideration with regards to what post fire blight, or I should say post-infection fire blight measures, and also during this really critical period that fire blight can still be wreaking havoc. It's just not a blossom, it's just not a bloom time thing. We really have to worry about fire blight from really the time that the blossoms open until the shoots harden off. The trees are going to be vulnerable during this entire time. So it can be very, very tricky. So as far as on really youngest trees that may have been planted, you could spray Actigard. I mean, that's not gonna hurt the trees. That might be something to consider in addition to whatever else you might be doing. Just because the trees are still vulnerable. But I would say just be careful as far as how much Actigard you put on, because what I've noticed at repeated applications of Actigard, what I mean is probably more than two to three applications in a row, can put a drag on the tree. And what do I mean by drag? Is that there's like a tinge, almost like a deficiency in the leaves of the tree. They're slightly yellow, slightly off. And so I don't know what that mechanism is. As I always say, you can't have too much of a good thing. So just be mindful as far as if you do use Actigard, just don't be piling it on your youngest trees. I do advocate using it, but like 2 shots is probably good as far as getting what you need to do, as far as being mindful of what you're spraying on your trees. And also, I believe there is a limit on the Actigard label as well. If you do see fire blight and you cut it out, you can use what we call the Actigard paint method, and it's kind of a misnomer as far as what we're saying paint. You're making up a concentrated Actigard solution in a concentrated adjuvant solution, and then you're spraying the bark and the wounds. That's what you're doing. You aren't painting. The person who kind of came up with this idea of the Actigard paint, it's the action of painting. You are not incorporating it in latex paint or anything. That it's like the physical motion of painting. So this is on the label. This is on the Actigard label as far as using this method of spraying a concentrated form of Actigard on the tree. And this will help your trees as far as during this critical time when they're growing and the immune system will be turned on, and it does limit canker length. It does limit canker infection. It does limit fire blight infection of young trees. So look on the Actigard label. It's very straightforward to do. And I believe that when you make up a solution, you get about 500 cuts worth in that one. I think it's like 1 ounce of Actigard that you put in a 1% solution of an adjuvant, so of some kind of penetrating adjuvant. But that it's all on the label. It's all spelled out on the label. And so it's just a matter of you're cutting out and then spraying the wound and spraying the bark to activate the plant's immune system. So that's another thing that you can utilize if you have fire blight. Okay, so as far as moving on to other issues, we're still in the time of the Marsanina blotch or apple blotch. We have had excellent conditions for the disease, and I haven't had a chance to go scout my orchards yet to see what, if anything, is out there. I know there's stuff out there. I think I'm in denial. I know there's rust. I've seen rust infection out there. I have thousands and thousands of cedar apple rust galls on cedar trees at the south end of our farm. And my poor galas got nailed, which are right next to said cedar trees. So definitely seeing early rust infections. And I'm sure there's probably some scab out there. Marsanina I may not see just yet. That sort of has a lag time from the time of infection, time you see symptoms. But still be mindful of managing for this disease right now. That's the disease you should be thinking about. And also rust is still active too. We should be on the tail end of rust, but those galls are still holding on, especially in the south central part of the state. But as far as for Marsanina control, it likes average temperatures from 68 to 77 degrees. All it needs is 4 hours of leaf wetness. It doesn't take much, and we've had that. We've definitely had that in spades over the last, it seems like forever. So the goal right now is to continue with your fungicide sprays, making sure you're not spreading your intervals too far apart, being mindful of how much rain has fallen. I was just looking at the newest station to see how much rain has fallen since the last time my plots were sprayed, and we've had 1.64 inches of rain that has fallen so far. Because I'm debating, do I want to put on another treatment spray this week, or do I want to push it to next Monday? Still debating. I think it all depends on what happens today and tomorrow if I put on another spray. But I am thinking like a grower for my research trials. I'm thinking how much rain has fallen. I don't want to be stretching these intervals too far because I don't want to mess up my field trials. So the growers should be thinking the same exact way. As far as what products people should be thinking about right now, thinking about anything but the FRAC 11s, because the FRAC 11s are not effective against Marsanina. So what are the FRAC group 11s? You don't want to be spraying Flint Extra, Maravon, or Luna Sensation right now. You want to save those for the summer. Save those for June, July, August, and September. The reason why is that the FRAC 11s, the QOIs, the strobilurins, they're all the same. That's basically the same name for everything here for the FRAC group 11 fungicides. They're effective against rots. They don't touch Marsanina. You want to be looking at the FRAC group 3s, the FRAC group 9s, the FRAC group 7s. Also Omega. Don't forget about Omega. Omega is a FRAC group 29. This is a little bit expensive, but what I've been advocating for growers who may have exhausted their FRAC 3s, or the number of FRAC 7s they want to apply right now, they're stuck because of how much rain has fallen and how narrow that they're keeping their intervals. Consider the FRAC 29 Omega. This is fluazinam, and fluazinam is a 28-day PHI, so you're very good for applying this right now. Tank mix this with mancozeb. I'd say the majority of folks are still within that 77-day pre-harvest, or I should say outside. Yeah, as far as they're within the range, they can still apply the mancozeb right now. Tank mixing the Rainfast mancozeb with the Omega, you should be good. That's another mode of action, and that Omega does a good job against Marsanina, especially when you tank mix it with the mancozeb. So that is another FRAC group people can be thinking about as far as tank mixing in. As far as organic goes, just as a reminder, you must be applying sulfur right now. That's the only product that's going to work. I've tested a lot of different soft products against Marsanina. Sulfur is the only one that you will be getting any semblance of control for. As far as other diseases, we're on the tail end of scab. So whatever you're doing for Marsanina should be picking up the tail end of scab. Powdery mildew, it's been so wet. I'm not sure how much powdery mildew action is going to be out there because it's just been so wet. Powdery mildew doesn't like persistently wet conditions. So I have a feeling this might not be a powdery mildew year. Of course, the year I have a bunch of powdery mildew trials. It's the year that I don't have that I don't have conditions. So just quickly moving to stone fruit. Just as a reminder, this is cherry leaf spot weather too. So if you have tart cherries, you need to treat that like you're treating your Marsanina, your apple scab. It overwinters in the leaves. It's going to be causing infections under the same conditions. And you want to be spraying regularly, and you want to be spraying until after post-harvest, because the goal is to keep the leaves on the trees as long as possible. And so just be mindful of that. Brown rot on cherries, on sweet cherries. I know a lot of folks have been asking me about brown rot methods, especially for sweet cherries, because that's really probably the most problematic brown rot issues at the moment. Not so much like peaches and nectarines right now, but it's going to be the sweet cherries just based on how they grow. Really, any of the fungicides, but I want folks to be mindful of, don't forget about Topsin or FRAC 1. The FRAC group 1s. This FRAC group Topsin, whether it's in the powder form or the liquid form, whichever one you use, that will be effective against brown rot. Years ago, we had done some fungicide resistance studies, and surprisingly, we saw that the brown rot fungus in Pennsylvania was still quite susceptible to the Topsin. So So again, you want to be rotating your fungicides, and it's going to be tricky under these conditions, especially for the cherries because of how they grow in bunches and clusters and groups. So you may want to be thinking of creating some air movement in those trees by perhaps pruning out some leaves just so you can get the air moving, because we've had some good breezy days, and just disrupting the environmental conditions in the trees will help. So. And then the last thing I just want to there's two things I want to mention. But first, let me talk about bacterial spots on peach and nectarine, because Don brought this to my attention from a grower we're going to be visiting this evening. We are in back spot weather, I'm afraid. It's been warm and humid and wet, and I think I've already seen some early symptoms on some of the leaves of my trees. So what do? This is a very tough disease to manage, just because there's not a lot out there that are really sort of the ace in the hole for managing this disease. Your number one defense is really resistance of the cultivar itself. So really, if you're thinking about planting new cultivars, think about back spot resistant cultivars. You'll, I think, get a lot of bang for your buck of those cultivars. But unfortunately, the high-end, high-value crops like apricots and plums are very susceptible against back spot, and your products are even more limited as far as what you can use. So for peaches and nectarines, the antibiotic of choice, oxytetracycline, I still advocate that. It still works. This comes as Fireline or MycoShield. Make sure you follow the product's label because they have changed over the years. So in many cases, you're applying less product than you were in the past. So just make sure you're reading those labels. So you can use that on peach and nectarines. You can't use Oxytet on plums or apricots. Unfortunately, it's not labeled. So what are your options? Copper, using a low rate of copper. So what does that look like? So any of the coppers, you can use any of the coppers. Just look at the metallic copper content. And what you want to be figuring out is applying 0.5 ounces to 1 ounce of metallic copper per acre. So as I always use is Coastside as the example. What that translates into is 0.5 ounces of metallic copper per acre of Coastside is 1.7 ounces of Coastside per acre. If you want to use 1 ounce of metallic copper per acre of Coastside, it's 3.4 ounces. So it's doing a bit of math and doing some conversions. If anyone has issues, I can always walk them through it. My goal one day is to make sure to have a table in the tree fruit production guide that I'll just to sort of reinforce what Shan had mentioned about the vast resources of the tree fruit production guide, which is very much a team effort. There's like 15 of us that work on this guide, and there's always one anointed person every 2 years who gets to collate all the updates, and I had the pleasure of doing it, collating all everyone's updates this year. But someday I want to actually have basically a table that breaks down like, okay, if you use this copper, this is the metallic copper content, this is what 0.5 ounce, this is what 1 ounce is. Right now, Rutgers has a table that has a handful of coppers where Norm LaLancet had done this. If you just use copper bacterial spot Rutgers, you will come across this online. And maybe I'll send the link to Don so he can put this link in the podcast description. But other products that you can use, just real quick, Serenade ASO or double nickel, using this in rotation. Also, Regalia is also another option, using this in rotation as well. But just as to be mindful of copper. Copper is a general biocide. It's going to be killing bacteria, fungi, and plant cells. So you will see a little bit of phytotoxicity. And copper is going to be more phytotoxic under slow drying conditions because the copper ions are going to be releasing like crazy from those particles. So you want to be mindful of using copper during really slow drying wet conditions like now, which you might not want to be applying copper right now. You maybe want to be looking at some of these other products. Another product that I've been looking at over the last couple of years, which I'm really optimistic about, but it's not a pesticide, it's actually a fertilizer, is this Nutrifite Magnum. And I know a lot of growers are using this based on their consultants. I can't advocate this as a pesticide because it's not labeled as a pesticide, but there does seem to be some side benefit of it controlling back spot. Still kind of I sort of have looked at it in years where they weren't really strong back spot years, but there is something going on with this particular product. It's a phosphorus acid-based product, so it's like Rampart or Profite, but it's different. Rampart and Profite don't work against back spot, and those are labeled as a pesticide. They're fungicides. But Nutrifite Magnum is not. This is a phosphorus acid, but it's a fertilizer. But one of its active ingredients is potash, and there has been some preliminary research that has shown is potash does have some antimicrobial activity. So maybe that's what's going on. But right now you cannot use it as a pesticide. But perhaps they may alter their label in the future. Who knows? But if you use this as a foliar fertilizer, you might be getting some also side control of some back spot. But again, I always caution people, you can't say this isn't a pesticide, so I can't really advocate it as a pesticide, but I have seen some benefits. So hopefully that won't blow up. But I will say follow the label, follow the label's the law. But if you're already using that as a fertilizer, there's some benefit. So that's it. Did I miss anything, Don?
No, that was cool. That was a great update.
One more quick thing, because I just got an email about this morning. Hail events, okay? Because this is the time for bad thunderstorms and hail events. So just real quick, if you have a hail event at your location, it's imperative that you get streptomycin on your fruit trees, your apple trees, in 24 hours, 24 hours or less. The reason why is that hail creates a wound. That wound is an entry point for bacteria. And what you're doing is when you're spraying streptomycin, you're killing the bacteria in that wound. If you wait longer than that, you've missed the window of opportunity because the wounds will heal and the bacteria would have already gotten in. So that's just as a reminder to really make sure that you don't waste any time getting strep on, because I just had someone email me asking me, I had hail on Saturday, should I spray strep now? I was like, it's too late. Strep's not going to do anything for you right now. So that's just as another gentle reminder. And I think I'll also get out a disease update, just alerting people just to remember to do that. And you're allowed 4 antibiotic sprays a year, and make sure you save one of those for a hail event. And streptomycin is going to be your best shot because that's the actual bactericide that will kill the bacteria. So.
Awesome. Cool. Dr. Krawczyk, Greg.
Well, thank you, Dan. I will try to keep it short. And the message is very simple right now. From the insect perspective, the 2 pests that we really should be dealing with right now is codling moth and still remainings of plum curculio. Those are the 2 pests that should be controlled this week. We are at about 240, 250 degree days since biofix for codling moth, at least for the Adams County. And this is the time when you want to have some insecticides on the surface of the fruit. So when the eggs that will be hatching from now on, when the larva is actually trying to enter the fruit, it will encounter the residue and will die before causing any damage. Plum curculio is on the end of the active period. However, it is still present in the orchard. Remember that plum curculio, any application that you already did to control plum curculio, most likely they were effective. However, they keep coming from the outside to the orchard. And if the model predicted correctly, we should expect that the end of ovipositional scars caused by plum curculio on apples should be sometime early next week, or also depositing of eggs, which eventually can result in the wormy fruit on any stone fruit, also will be about this time. But right now, with the temperature about around 70s and so on, this is a good time for plum curculio to infect fruit and cause damage. So if you worry about those two, codling moth and plum curculio, what to use? There's not a perfect bullet here. Saying this might be the only time that I would say that maybe using a mixtures that are already on the market might make sense. Using Volium or Besiege, those products actually have the active ingredients that include Altacor, and Volium includes also Actara, and Besiege include Warrior. And Altacor will be controlling codling moth, and in majority of the orchard, codling moth is very sensitive, and Altacor provides great protection against codling moth, while Actara, which is in Volium, or Warrior, which is in Besiege, should provide some control to protect from plum curculio. Actara and Warrior are not the best products against plum curculio, but I'm assuming that we are dealing with the remaining of the population right now, and you already did the Avant spray 1 or 2 or Assail at full rate that should control majority of the curculios. Another product that can provide control against both pests is Exirel. Exirel is from the same group as Altacor. It is also diamide, but Exirel has also some efficacy against plum curculio. It's not a plum curculio material of choice, but it will help. If you're gonna go with the straight Altacor, or for that sake, straight Delegate to control codling moth, and you worry about curculio, then you need to add something to the mix. The something might be another shot of Avant. The something might be another shot of Actara. You can make your own volume. They're basically mixing Actara and Altacor. You can add a shot of any pyrethroid. Any pyrethroid will be, a Warrior, it will be Danitol, it will be Asana, those kind of things. Or if you're not worried about codling moth because you have traps and you know that they are not out there, or you already did mating disruption, going only after plum curculio also makes sense with the products that at least partially will control codling moth. But the important part is this is the week to try to control codling moth. And the next time will be about 10, 14 days from now, because right now we are at about 250 degree days, 240, depends from the location. And the second time is at 550, which the forecast predicting, those temperature mostly in the low 70s, mid 70s. We are accumulating about 15 degree days per day, which will make us to 550 in about 10, 14 days. One thing about using either Altacor or Delegate, both of them are very active. Just make sure that if you finish last season with Altacor, then the material of choice at this time should be Delegate. If you finish with Delegate using any of the diamides, and diamides are Altacor, Exirel, Verdeprim, and also Volium, Besiege, then that's the option that you should use. With some cases of diamide resistance in some orchards, the rotation is really the best tool we have to maintain efficacy of those products. Other option, if you want to be soft on codling moth, soft in your orchard, is using right now granulosis virus. we do have the Sidex, we have Madex, and we have Virosoft. Any one of those are very effective against codling moth. However, you have to remember that virus is being deactivated within 7-8 days by UV light, and it's no longer working. So if you're gonna go the granulosis virus route, you really have to be very strict about reapplying the product on the weekly base applications every week. It's very important to remember this, because at day 8 or 9 after previous application, this product simply does not work. And it's not that the residue will get smaller because of the rain or because of the growth of the fruit. It basically becomes inactive. Even if the residue will be there, it simply will be inactive because of the UV ability to basically eliminate any effectiveness from the virus particle. That's really all the most important parts. I mean, of course, everyone can have a different challenges at the moment. I know that if you growing pears, you probably did agrimec, but this might be a time to go again and look what is on the trees and maybe go with something that you will target to control Persilla on pears. Exirel is good option, Delegate is good option, Actara is a good option, maybe Actara plus something is an option. There are other products, depends what is the most common stage of Persilla present in your fruit or trees. That's what you need to target. We are getting into the time when if you have a problem with white pit scale, it will be the time to control white pit scale. We're getting to this crawler stage, to the moment when controlling white pit scale should be effective. Last year, our application at May 12th was the perfect timing to control it. This year, I don't know. Again, everything is the weather dependent, weather played a role, but if you had a problem with white pit scale on your stone fruit, white pit scale doesn't affect palm fruit. Make sure that you are ready, and within the next spray that you're gonna do, spraying the Centaur, spraying Movento, Esteem, one of those products should help with your management of white pit scale. So that's really all I have. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg.
I have a question for Greg, a quick question. I could just ask him down the hall, but since we're here, others may have the same question. Okay, so Greg, I noticed that my pear block was sprayed probably with kaolin clay. I'm assuming it was kaolin clay because the trees were all white last week. But then the rain came and that whiteness has sort of been washed away. Now, should we go back in with another round of kaolin clay? Or did the kaolin clay do what it needed to do? Or
No.
I'm sure I'm not the only one who's affected by this.
It is a very good question. I mean, we spray your pears and my pears with Surround, which is a kaolin clay, because we had some nymphs present on the foliage. And Surround is a very effective product. It was developed as a horticultural tool, but it turned out as a pretty effective Persilla material, and it will work being sprayed anytime. The issue is that it has to be there to work.
Yeah, okay.
And if the rain wash it out, then it washed out. It is simply a dust. So reapplying makes perfect sense. However, when you're making the decision about reapplying Surround, think also about how big the fruit are and what kind of residue the application of this kaolin clay right now, what will still be on the fruit during the harvest. So if you like to use surround, and I think it is, and I will say it again, I think it is a good product to control Persilla. The next 2 weeks may be a good time to try to use and then stop using it. So at least you give some time for the weather to wash them out before the harvest. So you don't have to answer the questions. What is this white residue? Are those pesticides? So, those kind of things. So, yes. And, you can also mix kaolin clay surround with some insecticide like Actara, like pyrethroid, and then you're getting not only efficacy on the nymphs, but also on adults, which also makes sense. So mixing is okay. The issue is it's a clay, it will be washed out, at least partially. And if you don't have good coverage, then, well, it won't work. It's a mechanical. Kaolin has nothing, kill. It's basically desiccating the insects, the same like oil does with the soft-bodied insects. So that's a big part. Okay.
Oh, good to know. All right. Well, I guess I have to go tell Tim Baker, our farm manager, probably should put on another round of surround.
I asking for the first one. You can ask for the second.
Okay. All right. But I mean, it's good to know that you can actually mix insecticides with it, because that I didn't know. So that's a good nugget of wisdom there.
Awesome. Yeah, that was a great question. Greg, I did happen to send you forward you an email while we were on here because I got a question and I had no idea what it was. I can cut this whole thing if you don't want to take any part of this while on.
This email was also sent to me. It's a wild guess because I don't know what the diameter of the shoot is.
That's why I said it's not a great picture.
Nothing to compare. When someone is sending a photo with the injury, it's really good to have something that everyone knows what the size is next to the photo. This helps us assess
something for scale. Yeah.
To assess the scale for it.
Yeah.
I mean, my first guess, if this is a thick enough shoot, it will be that this is a leopard moth. That this is the pupa of leopard moth that actually, fed on this tree for a long time. This insect has 2-year developmental cycle.
Okay.
And they just pupating right now, and this is the time when they should start flying. So from the pupae, there will be emergence of leopard moth, and then the females will be flying. And, we see them here and there. They are not all pests that will destroy your orchard, but they can destroy some of your young trees.
Mm-hmm.
So they will kill 5 trees out of 100, and 5 trees will be dead. Depends where the injury happened, in the shoots or if in the main trunk. But it looks like a leopard moth pupa, but just looking at pupa coming from out of the shoots, I really can't say what species it is. But my first guess would be this is the leopard moth pupa, and the larva fed inside the shoot before. Now it's getting ready to emerge as adult. Okay. So that would be my best guess.
Cool. Yeah. So I guess
your pyrethroid application is really the only thing that we can do against leopard moth. In Europe, they actually using mating disruption to control leopard moth. But that's a different story. We don't even have this product available in US because it's an occasional pest, mostly affecting ornamental trees surrounding the orchard. But the female will also lay eggs inside the orchard, and then the larva will develop inside the growing shoot terminals. But since this is the larva that really can get the size of the pencil. I mean, the diameter like a regular pencil. So that's why I'm asking about the diameter of the shoot and comparison. Right now, from the picture, I don't know. There's nothing to compare with.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess if folks listening to this decide they want to send anyone some photos, try and have something for scale. Just a random stick on a desk isn't necessarily as
it can be helpful. A dime, it can be a quarter, something that we know what the size it is, so we can compare the size. Otherwise, it just I have no clue.
Sure. Yeah.
This can be huge or it can be very small.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for taking a crack at that, Greg. Cool. That's all I've got. I mean, we've been rolling for like 40-50 minutes, so I
Just
guess.
as a reminder, we've got for Pennsylvania the 3 last spring meetings this week.
Mhm.
So we are going to be at Freecon Orchards in Boyertown, right? I got the
Mhm.
right town, right? Okay.
Yep.
Tonight, 6
Yep.
p.m. And then tomorrow we are at Sorgel's Orchards in Wexford. That's just outside Pittsburgh. That's also at 6 p.m. And then we'll be at Birch's Fruit Farm and Market up in Northeast PA. That's in Erie County on Thursday at 10 a.m. That's going to be a morning meeting. So that's it for the PE meetings, but I will also give a plug for the New Jersey meetings next week. Because I will be in southern New Jersey and northern New Jersey. If you want to hear more tree fruit discussion, particularly for our New Jersey listeners or folks right across the border in PA. There's going to be a meeting on Tuesday, May 21st, and that's going to be at Nichols Orchards. That's in Franklinville, New Jersey. That's at the southern New Jersey. And then on the 22nd, it's going to be at Rymade Farm. It's Riamede. That's in Chester, New Jersey. And that's on the 22nd. That's on Wednesday. So I'm going to be at both of those because I'm filling in for their retired plant pathologist. So I just got basically the schedule for the meetings, and there's lots of good talks for these meetings, and there's lots of good credits being awarded too. So just to give a shout out for the New Jersey folks. I'm going on
Nice.
tour.
Yeah.
My tour
Taking it,
continues, I should say.
taking it out of state. Cool. I will post a couple links that we talked about today in the description for the episode. So if folks want to, look up some of the stuff we talked about, that'll be pretty readily available for you. Sean had to leave while we were chatting here. So it's just Kari, Greg, and I. But with that, we'll talk to y'all next week. So say goodbye, everybody.
See you later. Good luck.
Bye.